You are watching a master at work.
Alright guys, so today I'm just going to talk about some random things. We got in some Volinos, some Griva 08D. I don't know if 265s will fit on an 8.5, but we will see. I also got some Zestinos down there, what's left of them in the United States. And some toe plates from Jigs, so I can align this thing myself. Also, I'm going to be pulling this seat out and selling it because I need some extra funds and nobody really rides with me anyway, so it's not really a big deal. So yeah, pretty much we're going to talk about an oil analysis that I did with Rotella T6 and my little blend that I do. And one full season of drifting on the same oil, which was about 8 or 9 events, and it was in there for probably about 10 or 11 months. The oil was, with limiter bashing and everything. I never added oil, I never changed it, the same filter, it's a K&N filter. So I'm gonna show you, I sent it out to an independent lab and I did not tell them which one was the blank and which one was the used oil. Obviously, naturally, if the lab is good enough, which they are, they figured out which one was a used sample and another one that was not, so that's good. So I'm gonna break those down right now to you. Okay, so I'm going to explain and show you on the screen here. I'm just going to overlay my voice. Here is the blank oil test. So basically they measure, metals, inorganics, insolubles, things like that. And then all the way to the right they have universal averages. So that's what you should see in the sample. These averages or numbers are in parts per million. I'm pretty familiar with parts per million because I use it in my day job to calculate chemical dosing. So you can see here the aluminum, chromium, iron, copper, lead, so on. Aluminum and iron are a little higher than the average, and this is a blank sample, so it's just because probably the additives. In here, the molybdenum is 240. And the average is 69. That is because of the BGMOA. It's an anti-friction additive. The same with the boron and then the phosphorus and zinc. So those are all anti-friction additives. You can see the calcium is 2545 parts per million and the standard's 2000. This is an anti-friction oxidator or oxidant, whatever you would call it. Basically, the calcium is put in synthetic oils. I think it's calcium carbonate is the base, but basically the API, or the API, the American Petroleum Institute, they describe the calcium being an additive used in the engine oils as a detergent to control deposits and keep contaminants suspended in the oil so it can be filtered out. They also, in some form or another, neutralize acidic byproducts of combustion like carbon or fuel, for example. Their base, the American Petroleum Institute, has a base of 2,000 parts per million. That's their calcium range for major brands of passenger car oil, the 5W30. Basically, they kind of recommend to keep a track of your oil. Like if there's a high level of calcium in your oil, it can also have too much of a detergent in the oil, depending on the brand and manufacturer, with the high ash content. And the detergent itself, calcium, can contribute to lubricant contamination. Geez. So yeah, just kind of keep an eye on that. But on here, the manganese, nickel, silver, titanium, those are all metals, obviously. Silver is bad. That's sometimes can also be a coating or some type of additive in your alloy in the metal of your pistons or your block, depending on what it's made out of. The same with lead. Lead is a bearing issue. Most people think if you put a magnetic drain plug on your engine that it's going to catch metal flakes, and metal flakes are from like ring issues or piston issues or bore issues. It's not from bearings. If your crank wears into the bearings and starts spitting out metal, that's already too far. It's already scored the crank. So yeah, you kind of got to look for that copper, lead, iron, tin. It just depends on what the bearing manufacturer uses. The zinc and all that stuff, that's good. At the bottom you can see where they test the flash point and the boiling point of the oil, what their averages should be at 210 degrees Fahrenheit, the viscosity, which in this one is really good. The flash point I was really interested in because that's where the oil catches on fire, basically, where it combusts. So just from the base, the Rotella T6 is 425 degrees Fahrenheit, and a good range is above 390. No fuel contamination, no antifreeze, no water, obviously, because it's a blank sample. Insolubles, it's a trace, which there's gonna be something, it's impossible, it's physically impossible to get microscopic inorganics out of the air. Where you're breathing it now, that's why you have an air filter in your house, things like that. Your TBN is your total base number. They, as the lab, they kind of analyze the sample and see where you can keep your oil in there for oil longevity, like if you want to do extended drain intervals. So basically they kind of gave me an overall gist of what they think in their professional opinion, that the oil's in serviceable condition. The reason why the molybdenum is so high is because it's in the can of the additive, the BGMOA that I add. It's a friction reducing compound, molybdenum disulfide. You don't find it in much of Rotella, which is obviously the whole reason why I put it in there, because they cut back on their anti-friction reducing compounds a while back. It's a diesel oil. And boron and element calcium through zinc are additive elements also, they say. 1 to 2 parts per million of metals here and there, like aluminum or iron, are normal finds in virgin oil and don't show a problem. No moisture is present and insolubles are at a harmless trace. The oil should work well in its intended application, which is good. So we're gonna go over here to the sample that I actually have from my 1J. I kind of averaged 1,000 miles. I don't know what the mileage is, but it was like, 8-hour track days, like 8 or 9 of them. So, and I use 10% ethanol fuel. Obviously that's the pump where you just get 90% gasoline, 10% ethanol. I don't use pure gas. I feel that the 10% trace of ethanol can, help oxidize carbon buildup and stuff like that. So here, I'm gonna pull this, here we go. You can see the aluminum and the iron. The iron's a little bit higher for some reason. But in their overview of their professional opinion, they say it's typical wear about 3,000 miles of use. And I used it for an entire year. Bouncing limiter, freaking clutch kicks, and it has a big GTX 3076 on it with a stock ECU injectors, mass airflow sensor. And so you're like, that's interesting. It just takes it. JZs are just great engines. It's insane. They just take the abuse. And obviously Toyota engineered and designed this engine to be insane. Way well reliable past its intended use. It's more of the gentleman's agreement, They said the wear metals are low and it didn't show any contamination or mechanical issues. No fuel, water, or coolant in the sample of the oil, and they said the air filter did a great job, shown by the 11 parts per million of silicone. And the oil filter, the K&N oil filter I use from AutoZone, it's this Toyota Supra one. It kept insolubles and oxidized solids to a trace. And so my total base number for extended drainage is 9, and they recommend anything 1.0 and under needs to be changed. So they said to try for 3,000 miles, and I'm like, well, I don't know what the mileage is because my freaking, you know, my car doesn't have a speedometer or odometer or anything like that. I don't really, you know, it's a drift car, so what are you gonna do? But you can see, let me pull these up side by side here for you. Okay, so I have the virgin sample and the used sample next to each other. So you can see the aluminum is the exact same, chromium is the exact same, iron's a little higher, but it's below their universal average. You can see here, copper is 0 on both. Lead was a little bit more, is 2 parts per million versus 0, but that's obviously, that is impossible to, you know, you can't not have an engine dry start when it's cold. It's gonna have somewhere, but it's parts per million, that's microscopic particles. The tin was 0, the molybdenum was still there, it was 8, starting from 240, so it definitely used a lot of the anti-friction additives. It was still there though. The nickel was 0, manganese was 0, silver was 0, which is all good. Titanium was 1, which hadn't changed. Potassium was 3, which is a part per million higher than the base. Boron was 20 less than the base, 155 versus 171. Silicone was 11 versus the base 7, which is really good. Sodium was 4, so you're not having leaks or burning of your valves, because most of the stock valves are sodium-filled exhaust valves. Calcium was 2341 versus 2545, which is good. Kind of oxidized that off a little bit, so it's not contaminating the oil. Magnesium was higher. Phosphorus was also higher. Zinc was this, I mean, it's about the same, honestly. Negligible, like a couple parts per million off. Barium was 0. The viscosity went down just a little bit, so it thinned up just a tiny bit, but it's a 5-weight 40. So kind of went down just a tiny bit. You can also see the other viscosity was a little lower, which is normal, obviously. Use, the thickness is going to decrease, and it's a multi-weight oil, 5W40. The flash point went down, so obviously it either had a little bit of fuel contamination, which it did show it was 0.5 parts per million or less. So that's probably going to affect it a little bit. No antifreeze, no water, trace of insolubles. So you only lost 0.6 of your total base number. So yeah, I would definitely get your oil tested to see what it's like. You know, it's a good standard to base it with. It's only $28 if you do the extended drain with the base test. The company is called Blackstone Labs. They're in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Yeah, so, you know, send your sample in. They send you a little bottle. It's pretty cool. You know, you just write all your information on there, get a sample. They explain how to take the sample. And yeah, it just shows how freaking awesome a 1JZ, 2JZ is. Like bone stock, not even open bottom end, top end, nothing. Just, I literally bolted on a freaking turbo and it's stock everything and it works. So yeah, tell me what you think about my findings and my research and stuff down in the comments below. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the Valinos and some of the stuff next video. I'm still gonna take apart my front end on the GK Tech, the lower control arms. I got the ball joints and stuff in. They have a little bit of place, so I'm gonna rebuild them with new ball joints, the Heims. So that's another video, just look out for that. And yeah, just drop a comment, like, subscribe. I appreciate all you guys putting your input in, and commenting and liking the video and watching. It keeps this channel afloat. I just kind of do this in my spare time after work or on the weekends, you know, things like that. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see you next video.